Give me a minute and let's talk about where Russia is at with its oil customers. Because oil before the war was two-thirds, 60% of Russia's economy. And if you take a look at the chart up here, the red at the bottom there, that's China. And you can see Chinese sales have barely changed over the course of the war. The gray area, that's the EU, right? Before the war, the EU bought a lot of oil and refined oil products from Russia. And you can see that that has dropped down to nearly nothing, right? We're down to nearly nothing with Europe. But the Indians replaced a lot of those sales. That's that yellowish tan color there in the middle, right? The sales to India have made up the vast bulk of the lost European revenues. And then Turkey and Brazil come in with negligible numbers, small numbers. This chart is in millions of euros a day, 30-day running average. And if we take a look at where we began before the war and where we are today, you can see that revenues have declined by 60 million euros a day, which translates to 22 billion euros a year annualized losses, or about $24 billion. Now, here's why we're having this conversation right now. Because for two reasons. One, there is this mythology that Russia's extraction economy is endless and there are endless customers and they're willing to pay anything and it makes them billions of dollars a day. They can afford anything. Bullshit. Their pockets are not as deep anymore as they once were. And they're getting more and more shallow every day. Here's why. India made up the bulk of the lost European revenues, right? These are the number of tankers, oil tankers, coming into Indian ports every day on average for the last year. If we take a look, we can see that deliveries to India peaked back in May. And now, since October, when the U.S. announced its secondary sanctions and sanctioned Sovcomflot, who is the largest transporter of Russian oil, those figures have been dropping off until from February to March, we see they're halved last month, from about 42 transport ships a day to about 22. Now, the reality of the Indian market is that sales there are collapsing. And there's a couple of reasons why. Some competitors are undercutting the Russians. The UAE, who finances a lot of these deals, brokers them, and handles the cash transfers, has backed off and doesn't want to deal with Russian money because they're afraid of U.S. sanctions. And then the last reason is the Sovcomflot fleet. Sovcomflot has been sanctioned by the U.S., and as of today, India, no refinery in India will accept any oil from Sovcomflot ships. So what we're seeing is the collapse of the Indian oil business for Russia in real time. I expect this number to be halved again next month. And that's a big deal because India took up the slack. And without India there, Russia's going to be facing a real dilemma. Where are they going to find customers like India? They're not. They're not. Not even at the sanction price, they're not. And that means they're going to be looking at further production cuts. Further production cuts causes all kinds of problems to the industry. It's not like a water faucet. You can't just close a well and then reopen it at your whim. That's not going to happen. Not in fucking Siberia, it's not. You might be able to do that in the shale of West Louisiana or El Paso, but not in Siberia. So the practical upshot of this is that we are watching Russian oil sales collapse in real time on top of everything else that they are having trouble with. This is their reality. And when we think about that, when we think about Putin funding his war, and we think about the kind of cannibalistic nature of the wartime economy, that it is unsustainable, the fact that this is how he's been paying for it, and he's going to have less of this to pay for it with, is a hard reality that the Kremlin is going to have to deal with in the near term. Thanks, guys.